Ladies and gentlemen, while a day after this dastardly terror attack here, local newspapers in Kashmir had blacked out their front page in protest of what happened in Pahalgam. Global newspapers clearly don't seem to relate with that, clearly don't want to reflect the reality of what's happening in Jammu and Kashmir. The US Republican majority of House Committee on Foreign Affairs slammed the New York Times for its headline, and the headline said that several people in India have been killed in Jammu and Kashmir. They described the terror attack as a shooting incident and called the terrorists as militants. Now, the US Republican majority understandably lashed out at them, saying this is a simple terror attack, not a shooting incident, and that militants should be plainly called as terrorists and terrorists only. And that, remember, comes after the entire US administration, whether it's President Donald Trump or the Attorney General or the Vice President J.D. Vance, have all come forward and condemned this dastardly act. My colleague Sagarika is with us on the broadcast, getting us more details of whatever has happened in terms of what New York Times has shown, as well as other foreign newspapers. Sagarika, over to you.
How difficult is it to spell the word terror? How difficult is it to call out terrorism for what it is? And how difficult is it to call a terrorist without using any ifs or buts or any other terms? And now, international publications are being called out. Let's take you through that post by the House Foreign Affairs Committee majority of the United States, where they have clearly called out the New York Times. What do they say? Let's quote. Hey, New York Times, we fixed it for you. This was a terrorist attack, and terrorist attack has been written in all caps to send out a loud and clear message. And it says, plain and simple, whether it's India and Israel, when it comes to terrorism, the NYT is removed from reality. And this is how they have sent out that message. They've taken the headline, they've struck off the word militants, and they've written terrorism. But do you think New York Times is the only one? No, because let's take you through some other publications as well. When we go with the headline of the Al Jazeera, they use the word gunmen and armed men. No mention of the word terrorists. They are saying gunmen open fire on tourists, and then they call it armed men open fire. How do you think the BBC is reporting it? Some headlines have gone on to read that gunmen open fire. So terrorists, when will international publications who have been called out not for the first time, this has happened in the past as well, when an act of terror, when innocents are massacred in cold blood, when there was religious segregation in Pahalgam, when the world is standing with India in its fight against terrorism, there are international publications today which are on test, which are being called out. The New York Times has been called out in the United States. They've gone on to say, whether it is India or Israel, when it comes to terrorism, NYT is removed from reality. Over to you, Shreya.
Right, Sagarika. So it doesn't come as a surprise. In fact, Sagarika, the fact that Western media has, ensured that they don't show the reality, it doesn't come as a surprise that publications like New York Times and others like BBC have not called out the terrorists, have not called out the Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is right there, the reality, the hypocrisy of Western media. Take a look at some of the reactions that have come in. One of those reactions against the Western media has come from the Hindu American Foundation in the United States.
A Lashkar-e-Taiba offshoot took credit for storming a meadow in Pahalgam and murdering at least 26 tourists, seeking out Hindus with chilling precision. The headlines should be simple. Hindus massacred in Kashmir by Islamists in a terror attack claimed by a Pakistan-backed terror group. But what do we get from the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, BBC, Reuters, and AP? Another masterclass in whitewashing, gaslighting, false equivalencies, and revisionist history. Across the board, you'll see patronizing sneer quotes around terror attack and sanitized references to the killers as militants. A militant targets the state, and a terrorist deliberately targets and kills civilians to spread fear for ideological or religious aims.
All right, so that, of course, was the reaction that came in from the United States of America. But viewers, remember, it's not just the US that is pouring in their angst against Western media and the terror attack in Pahalgam. There's also the UK Parliament that discussed this, that spoke about it, and British MPs giving their reaction of how this dastardly act needs to be condemned. Listen in.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it's rightly been mentioned about on Tuesday the systematic murder of Hindu pilgrims in Pahalgam in India. The sad reality is that the terrorist group that is thought to be responsible for this, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, these are a Pakistani organisation that deliberately targets innocent people in Jammu and Kashmir. Already the Indian government have revoked visas, closed the border and expelled officials from Pakistan as a result. Probably most importantly, they've suspended the Indus Water Treaty. Now, I think this is an important aspect that we need the Foreign Secretary to come and make a statement to the House on what could end up being a very quickly escalating situation between India and Pakistan. Tonight, there'll be a vigil outside the Indian High Commission. I will be representing the opposition. I understand there'll be representatives of the government as well. We must give our reassurance and support for the government of India in making sure that they apprehend these terrorists and make sure that those responsible for supporting them are also brought to justice. My understanding is that the Pakistani government and the Pakistani military have condoned these attacks. So I'm sure the leader will join with me in condemning absolutely these terrorist atrocities and also making sure that people who visit Jammu and Kashmir are held safely and do not have to suffer such incidents yet again.
We come together in grief. Brothers and sisters, when terrorists strike, they strike at the heart of humanity, wherever they may be. This terrorist outrage, singling out people who were Hindu, and indeed I understand Christians as well, demonstrates these people have hatred for people because of their religion. They cannot be tolerated. I raised the issue today in the House of Commons, and I've asked for a statement next week from the government to make sure we express not only our grief and our support for India, but also for the actions that India will need to take following this terrorist outrage. The sad reality is that we could see a rapid escalation. And from my personal perspective, obviously I express my condolences to the victims, to their families, and indeed to all Indians, wherever they may be, who have been so sorely affected.
But also I was deeply saddened this week with the cowardly, deadly, shocking terrorist attack on innocent tourists in Jammu and Kashmir. The families and the victims are very much in my prayers, and I sincerely hope that the perpetrators will be swiftly brought to justice.
All right, so there you heard Conservative MPs in the British Parliament reacting to this horrific act that has happened in India's Jammu and Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, we will keep getting you the latest minute-to-minute updates from the ground. Remember, Times Network has been getting you continuous coverage on the ground from Jammu and Kashmir. We're also now picking up that Rahul Gandhi, the leader of opposition, has reached Srinagar, where he'll straight away go and meet with the injured at Army's 92 base hospital. But more on that on the other side. Right now, it's time for a short break.